presentation by Lee Armstrong. And then we will have the last half hour for questions and for work along. But anyway, for the time being, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Monica.
Okay, thank you. It's so nice to see all of you. Thank you for asking me to do this. My plan is to spend a little bit of time at the beginning just quickly showing you 3 of the pop-up book stages that I use in different shows, and then showing you some of the books that I think are particularly useful for ideas. And then I think that I'd like to do a demonstration, show you how to make something out of cardstock, just really simple. And if you guys are armed with cardstock and scissors, I have to go get a pair of scissors, sorry.
I'd loan you mine, but.
And Kamala, you're not muted, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. Yeah.
If I want Kamala to take up my whole screen, do I just click on her?
Yes.
One of the Monica's who you will want to click.
Right.
But what you can do is go to the view, and so instead of being the Brady Bunch gallery view, you can go ahead and click on view, and then you can see the names, or you can just see the presenter. The speaker view is probably the one you want.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You want to see things up
recommend
close?
everyone do that. Go to the speaker view. Yeah.
Anyway, those of you who want to work along and just make a little, it's going to be a really simple little sample, but it's basically to show you, to clarify in your minds any questions about how it actually works, you know, how they work. So we'll do that. And then after we do that, I'm going to go back through the books again and show you some of the details that I did that are done differently from the example. And then, you know, after Nick's memorial, which I think is a wonderful idea, I'm glad you're doing that. After that, then we can also have questions and discussion. So I'm just going to start, and I probably have to move my webcam down here so you can see. I'm just going to start by showing you the very first pop-up show book I ever did. I made this in 1998, and some of you have seen it because I've done it at several festivals. It's the Little Red Riding Hood show, and this is the simplest of all of them. And it's just 5 pages. And most of them are just simple. They might have a little extra added detail, like this one has a little bird that comes up out of the tree. But it's pretty simple. This is what's called a V-fold. And if I hold it up like that, you can see why it's called a V-fold. This is the technique that I think is the most versatile and the most useful. And it's the one that I've kind of used as the main construction technique for all of the shows I've done like this. And I think I have 5 of them now. And here's another V-fold page. There's 3 layers. And you can see that each layer is shorter than the layer behind it. This one is really only one layer that goes across, and the other parts are tabbed to this layer. And I think if I hold it up like this, you can see this tab, these pieces that are tabbed from one to the other. Wait, I think there. Oh, and then this is not the same technique. This is a little different, although not all that much different, because the headboard and footboard of the bed are also V-fold. You can see when I open and close it. And then it's got this extra thing in the middle that attaches to them. And then in the show, I've got a little mattress and blanket and stuff that I put in there. And then this is the last one. And this is also 3 layers, although the middle layer is basically tabbed to the top layer. Can you all see that? Is that working for you to be able to see this? Okay. So that, like I said, this is the first one I ever made, and it's the simplest. This is another one. This one I made, let's see, right? Yeah, it goes like this. This is the one that I made a few years ago was actually the last thing I made before my late puppet partner, Terry Jean, died, and she directed it. And it was actually sort of our performing memoir. And so it also has, but in this one I got a little fancier. Each page represents a different, a different aspect of our working together. And this, of course, is a first grade classroom. And on the floor of this classroom is the rug that the kids sit on for story time. But the rug comes up, and on this side of the rug, when it comes up, you can see a table with all of the puppet heads on there to dry after the kids painted them. And then I go back to the rug, and I open up the other side of the rug, and there's a little puppet stage. And these, for this book, all of the puppets are paper puppets, but we're going to go into that a little bit later. So I'm going to close this rug again. The next page was the summer touring arts team. We've got the state van here driving all around Iowa. There's a magnet on the back, as I'm sure you've guessed. Crazy drivers. This was a typical small town that we went to. And on this one, I added windows that opened, showing the local residents and even their pets. On this side, we've got a shadow screen, and when it came to this scene, I turned out the lights and used a flashlight behind here for shadow puppets. And then this was the pickup truck that we drove after our Suburban broke down. But it had been parked in the woods for a while, and this is what was living inside of it. A string of mice. So that's that. Next page, in the 90s, in the late 80s and 90s, we did a lot of work in Wyoming. So this is the trip to Wyoming. And then there's a little house that comes up behind. This is the simplest page. This is really just three, wait, does that show? Yeah, I guess it does. Yeah, just three V-folds. This was the first time that we ever performed in Germany. This was in 1987 in East Germany at a national puppetry festival. And the city that it was in, Magdeburg, had a statue of our namesake, Till Eulenspiegel. So that's an extra little thing that folds out. And then this is the last page. This is our puppetry center right here that we bought the building in 95. And a big owl comes out of this side. And this side, those are all strips of Velcro that I stick different posters to. And then there's the little kid coming up out of the puppet stage. So that's those. This bottom one here, I'm pretty sure this is the most recent one I've made. This is a 2 or 3 years old. And this is called A Magical Winter's Night, and it's about a child's adventures in the woods and the wildlife and the imaginary creatures and all that she sees while she's in the woods. So this one has a lot of extra little things in it, like, does this show? I ought to check and see. No, I don't think I've got it moved over far enough, do I? Wait. Oops. Let's see if I can pull this back a little bit and get it into more of the camera. There's a lily of the valley that comes up. I'm not sure you can see that. I might have to move this camera around. You know what? I think I'm going to click on speaker view too, even though I'd much rather see all of your beautiful faces. I think I need to have a larger view of what I'm doing here so I can see what you're seeing. Okay, there. Oh, okay, that's better. Yep, here's the little lily of the valley that comes up like this. And then there's a fox head and tail. And then the fox disappears and reappears back here. And these are just the kind of fun things that you can do with this technique. And then over here, this little flap opens up and there's a hollow tree with a raccoon inside of it, or a hollow tree stump. This is the creek. And there's an extra little flap over here that opens up, and there's a cave behind that flap. So I've gotten into the point where I really like doing these little extra things that open up. This one actually needs a little weight to hold it down. Here we go. And this one, the leaves come off of the trees, blow off of the trees, and we segue to winter. And then on this side, there's a flap that opens up, and there's a fairy ring of toadstools there. And then there's a tree, a spruce tree right over here. And then the last page of this book is a shadow screen. And actually, when I made it, I'm going to turn it around because I don't have enough hands to hold all the characters. I just built some of the characters right in. And then I attached little rods to them so I could move them. That got bent. So that's, and then I've got this is a piece of blue gel. And then once again, I just have a little clip lamp behind there that I turn on. So I just wanted you to see those just because they've got different, they all use different techniques. But the main technique that I just think is the most helpful all around is the one that is called the V-fold technique. And I'm going to make, if you want to work along, now would be a good time to get a couple pieces of cardstock ready and some glue, a glue stick or some tape or something like that, and a pair of scissors and a pencil. And I'm going to start, and now I think I'm going to go back to the gallery view so I can see if any of you are doing this. If you need to, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to start with this piece of 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold it in half and then crease it really hard. I really like this tool, this little plastic tool for creasing, and also it doesn't exactly score, but it's got a sharp edge here that you can kind of score with too. And it really makes this job a whole lot easier. Now for the inside, I'm going to take another piece of cardstock, and I'm also going to fold that in half and crease it. Now I'm going to show you a little trick that I'm sure other people know too, but I felt like I developed it because nobody showed it to me. But it really, if you're one of these people like me that really don't like to measure, that would really rather just eyeball things, this is how you can get away from doing a lot of measuring. Okay, this second piece, I just cut a little slit in there. Can you see that? Whoops. And I'm going to take that and fold it over on both sides and crease that. So that I now have, I've used this cardstock that's a different color on both sides so you could see a little bit more clearly what I'm doing. I now have those two tabs there like this. So I'm going to leave them folded down, and then I'm going to open this up again, and I'm going to lay this in here at an angle with this snugged right into the crease there. Can you see that? So that if I closed it now, it would look like this. And then I am going to close it. I'm going to make a little bit more of an angle. Then I am going to close it, and I'm going to use a pencil. So now you can see that see how the orange is sticking out over the yellow? I'm going to take a pencil and make a line like that. That's how much of it will fit inside of the book. Because the key with pop-ups is you have to make sure that everything fits inside, because if you got stuff sticking out the edges, you don't have the surprise factor when you open it up. You don't want stuff hanging out over the edges. So this is how you can find out for sure exactly how big your very back. Remember when I showed you the books and the back was always taller and then the middle one was shorter and the front one was shorter? This is how big the back one can be. If it's any bigger than this, it won't fit in the book. It'll spill out and you'll ruin your surprise. So it fits in like that. You can see how it fits in because it all goes right into that right angle there. And the next thing I'm going to do is take a glue stick. Now when you're making your final stage, you don't want to use anything as wimpy as a glue stick. I use contact cement when I'm doing that. But for this, for a little mock-up, a glue stick is just fine. So I just put a whole bunch of glue on that thing there. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to turn it over and open the other side and slather the other side with a glue stick. Close that. Now, let's see if it's going to work. Open it up, and there you have your first stand-up wall. Okay? You didn't snug that quite into the corner. There, that's okay. No, I just didn't press it down well
We
enough.
just had a question.
So
Could you, I think, repeat that one? There was a question that they couldn't hear you.
Okay, what couldn't you hear?
They didn't specify. It was just about 2 minutes ago, or just about a minute and a half ago. She couldn't hear the last part.
Should I take this apart and show it again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Pull it out. Is it just the gluing down part that who was it that couldn't hear? Can you raise your hand? Okay. Was it just the gluing down part you couldn't hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's what I did was I laid this in here, right? So that it fits right in there so none of it spills out over the edges of the cover.
Actually, can you start from like the cutting part, because I couldn't hear from there. You cut the paper.
Okay, I'll start with a different one here. Here's another one. I fold it in half. Tell me if you can't hear me, okay? I fold it in half and I crease it. There, like this. And then right here in the fold, I cut up about 1/2 inch or so. Can you hear me? And then I fold that up. And
Monica, we had a request. Could you move the camera down a little bit? We see your shirt just a little bit more per the. Yep. Sorry. Thank you.
Lower the camera.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Is it in your view now?
That is much better.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Yeah, please feel free to interrupt me if there's anything you can't see. Yeah, I think I'll move it down even a little bit
That'd be
more.
great. There was also one more question. Can the tabs be in the front or in the back, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They work the same either way. I always end up covering the tabs with whatever I'm covering the whole book, you know, the whole page with. I usually end up, here, I'll show you this. See if I can find one. I usually end up using some kind of paper or doing something with the tabs to kind of integrate them in. Either cover them up with whatever paper you're covering the page up with, or put something on them. But they're really, you know, it's not important. They're not going to take focus. When you've got stuff popping up, the little tabs are not going to take focus. But I'm also, okay, I'm creasing the other side too. Make sure that's even there. Like this. And now I'm going to take this folded thing and I'm just going to snug this right up against the crease of what will be my cover. See? How that's snugged up and it's sort of angled. Can you see that angle okay? Okay. And then I'm going to close the cover over it. And as you can see, there's a large bunch of stuff sticking out over the cover, right? So now I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to draw around that cover. So there's a very clear line right here around the cover. Can everybody see that? Okay, and then I can pull this out. There's still some residual glue there. I can pull this out and cut right around along that line I just made. And that will fit in there now without sticking out. I'm not going to glue it in right away though this time. Instead, I'm going to cut it into some kind of a different shape to show you how you can make, for instance, this could become trees, or it could become mountains, or it could become a house. It could become anything you want to have in the back row. So why don't we turn this into a couple of trees or something? This is going to be super simple. Now don't judge me on this. But I'm just going to cut like this. As if this were foliage.
There was also a question, is the angle of the V important? You seem to be consistent with eyeballing the angles that are quite alike. Is it important for the pieces on the same page to be the same angle? Is there an optimal angle range?
Yes, they will be, and I'll get into that in just a minute. You don't want them to be too shallow. The optimal angle is, you know, I'm sure there is an optimal angle, but basically you don't want them to be so shallow that it doesn't stand up. But the deeper they are, the more space you're wasting, and also the less visibility you have, because you want as much visibility here as you can have. You know, if it's too deep of an angle, then you don't have a lot of stage space there. So I'll show you this again. This is, I'm not even sure what this angle is, but this is sort of what I always end up with, is about that.
Yeah.
An angle about like
I can see it. It looks a little bit fuzzy. I don't know if your camera's adjust. Oh, there, it came into focus. Perfect. Sorry. Thank you.
Here, I'll do it again. Okay. So I'm going to turn this into a backdrop of trees. I'm going to leave these tabs all the way along here though. you know, I'm just gonna cut this as if I were gonna turn this into brush or a flower bed right there. And then I better do the other side over here too, so that we've got a tree trunk there. And once again, I'm not gonna cut this open. I'm gonna leave that together. Okay, here we go. Now, I have 2 trees for my background. And now I'm going to show you the gluing again. Here's my cover piece. I'm going to lay this in here and make sure I get it so that the full tree is inside. See? And then to get the angles matched up on both sides of the page, I start by putting glue right there and closing the page on it. And then I turn it around and open the other side. Put glue right there and close the page on it. And because you closed it, you're guaranteed that they're at the same angle. You know, you weren't just trying to glue them down and hope they were at the same angle. Closing the cover on them guaranteed that they were at the same angle. And now you've got your back. Now this is the one point I have to go. Yeah, this is the one point that you are going to want to use a ruler. Excuse me, I didn't have my ruler ready either. I don't know where it is.
And Barbara, if you have a moment, if you can mute your computer, that would be great.
You want to make sure that the angle for the next layer is the same, is a consistent distance away, or is a consistent angle from this. Every layer now has to be the same angle. You can't change angles in midstream. So I'm going to measure 2 inches from the back and I'm going to draw a line there. That line will be my guide for the next layer. Can you see the line there, the pencil line?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So now I've got to take another piece of this, do the same thing, fold it in half, crease it, cut it open, fold it up, crease it, fold up the other side, crease it, line it up against this line that I just made. Close it. Draw around the cover again, like this. And you can see that this one's going to be a lot smaller. So this is sort of, wait, what did I just do? I just put it, what did I just do? I did not do what I intended to do, but it looks like it's going to work all the same.
And there was a question, should you always start with the back row?
There are advantages and disadvantages to either way. Probably on the whole, I started with the back row now just to show you how the tall thing fits in. Probably on the whole, it's easier if you start with the bottom row because of the glue not getting smeared onto other parts. So on the whole, it's probably better to start with the bottom row. because when I start with this row now, the gluing is going to be a little trickier so it doesn't stick onto there. But if you start with the bottom row and move to the top, then you don't have as much trouble with the glue getting stuck around to other places. Okay, so this row, I'm going to see if I can avoid doing that. I'm going to, wait, now I'm really getting confused. Oh, I see, it's this way. I did it backwards from the way I was planning on doing it. But I'm going to put a whole bunch of glue right there by that line I just made. And to avoid having the glue get messed up, I'm going to draw a corresponding line on this side, 2 inches in. And put a bunch of glue on that. Put glue there. Line the backs of this up to the lines I just drew. Oops. Glue sticks are not the ideal thing for this, but they're good for a quick sample and a quick mock-up.
So what would you normally use if you don't use a glue stick? What would you normally use?
Well, normally I'd use for the finished one, I'd use contact cement. This is good for the mock-up. I was just going to say, I always make a miniature mock-up for every show that I do before I try to make it, before I try to make it big sized. What did I do? Boy, I'm really embarrassed. I did something wrong on this one.
It looks like you put it on the wrong side when you traced it and may have cut it. Yeah.
I'm going to do it with this one. I'm going to redo that part with this one that I set aside before. Now there's a new one on me. I've never done that before.
And another question came up. What kind of paper do you use for the actual stage?
For the actual stage, I use, the rule is that every layer should be a lighter weight paper than the layer outside of it. So cardstock, I would only use like inside of poster board or railroad board or something like that. There, we'll do this. This will be better, and then I won't be quite so horribly embarrassed. There, now let's see if this will work. There, okay, now we've got 2 layers.
And one more question.
Oh, I haven't finished answering the other one.
That's
I'm
okay.
Sorry. Can I get into some of this stuff later after I show
Absolutely.
them how to do the mock-up? Let me answer the questions about final materials after we get done with the little mock-up here. And then I'm going to take this one that's finally the way it's supposed to be, and I'm going to make something out of that too. Maybe we'll make a little house over on this side. And then on the other side, well, I guess we could just make like a duplex kind of house here. We could put a window in there. It's always fun to have a window because then you can see back to the layer behind it too. Okay. The good thing about making a mock-up is that it avoids so many mistakes, so many problems later on. If you just get the mock-up right, you can identify any problem you might have in the mock-up. Okay, so now here we have 2 layers. We've got the little houses in the front. I think I should glue those on the other way so that you can see them, so that the yellow side shows. So you can see them yellow instead of orange. And I think that'll make it easier to see the whole thing. So there's the 2 layers, the tree layer in the back, and then the house layer. And they all close in like that. And when you open it, they all come up. And of course, you can have another shorter layer in the front, or you can, if you just want something on one side, you can put a tab from the house to the thing in front and have it work that way. But for it to open up, there always has to be a connection between the 2 sides. That's what makes it open up. It's the connection between this side and this side. If those trees were separate and they weren't connected down here on the bottom either, that wouldn't stand up when you opened it. It's the connection between the 2 sides that makes it stand up. The reason that I virtually always end up using this particular technique when there are many other ways to make pop-ups is that this is how you can get the most size. There's nothing else that you can do that stands up as tall coming out of the book as this technique does. And that gives you the advantage of being able to make your book relatively small, but have it open up into a relatively large stage. Okay, so that's a mock-up. And like I say, I would always make a mock-up for every show I did, every page of every show, before I start working on the final. And now to answer your question on materials for the final. The outside is mat board or something of that weight. And all of the pages actually are mat board. And then the inside, these things, this is railroad board, which is like a heavyish poster board. And this book, you know, I made this in 1998. And I have done this show. This show ended up being the one that my late partner, Terry Jean, used to call our hit single. This show, I've done this show more than any other show I've ever had in my life. I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. I've never had to fix the book. Even though it's just cardboard and poster board, it's just held up great. I end up gluing the 2, you know, I just glue the pages together. You can either glue them together with a hot glue gun or with contact cement. Looks like I used contact cement. I like contact cement because it doesn't make any ridges the way hot glue does. So I think on the whole, contact cement is a better choice. I also use contact cement to glue all of these things down, to glue all of the tabs down. And then sometimes I'll add stuff on the bottom that I know most of the audience can't see. But like this pathway, this path goes all the way through the book from Grandma's house, through the forest, back to Little Red Riding Hood's house. And like I said, I know that most of the audience can't see that, but there it is for me. You know, I get to see it. So that's sort of the basic technique. This is kind of the backbone of everything else. But there are a lot of other techniques you can use that are really nice for adding extra details. And I'm going to go into a few of those with a little more detail now. For instance, one of the things I love are these extra things that you can put into each scene to make it even more fun. And this is a technique that's called the floating table technique. I think you can see that there's like a piece of poster board on each side here that tabs down and is glued to the bottom. And then stuck on top of it is an oval that's folded in half. And then the little puppet heads on top are basically made with the V-fold technique that I just showed you. So when I close that page there, that folds up and disappears. And on this side, The little puppet stage, that's just another shorter V-fold than the V-fold behind it. But it folds into this extra thing. Let's see if there's anything on this page that's different. I think these are all basically V. This is another V-fold thing, but it has the extra thing that on the back, I put little tabs for the windows that can open. Let's see if I can stand that up so you can see the window tabs. Just in the back, they're just held on by little straps, and then I just pull them up and down from the back. Let's see what else is in here. Oh yeah, this is just another V-fold. This is just 3 V-folds again. Short, medium, and tall. This one is 2 V-folds, but I cut open all the windows in this. This is supposed to be the partially bombed out old town in the back. I think I have to move the camera up a little bit so you can see that. And then the Soviets yet style construction that they threw up after the war, you know, threw up in a hurry after the war, is this stuff in the front, and I cut open all the windows so you can still see a little bit of the old town through the windows. And then this is again just another V-fold, but I glued it in at an angle so it closes at a slightly different angle so it fits in there. And then this is really just a V-fold with an extra piece that opens. And then this guy folds to fit in there. And then this is a really fun little technique where the little, it's hard to show you this over Zoom, but the little character on the inside is glued in at an angle so it pops up like this. But I'm going to show you right now a really cool book. My 2 favorite how-to books are this one and that PDF that I sent you, Cam. It has a book list on it. This is really cool because it shows you all of the techniques, but it also breaks them down into little parts. So there are all of these little doors that open in the book, and each one of them shows you how to construct a different technique. It's really good for visual learners. This one, the raccoon, the hollow tree stump in the other book, that was made like this. It's really an octagon that's glued down on both sides. And I love this book. I think this book is brilliant because it shows you how to do so many different things.
Monica, we've all been chatting online on here. I know you can't see that because you're presenting, but great ideas. Thank you. That's slick. Awesome. My brain is abuzz with ideas. Wow. Love the pop-ups. One of the questions that came up, though, was how do you use this with puppets? So do you have some of these with scenes?
I'm going to show you a couple different ways.
Perfect. Thank you.
I use it with puppets. Let me just quick show you a couple more books first. This is all of the page numbers that are listed on the PDF are out of this book. This was the first book I ever bought. And in the meanwhile, I have way more pop-up how-to books than I need. But this is the first, because I'm a bookaholic, but this is the first one I bought, and the page numbers that are cited in there are from this book. I think this book doesn't have the advantage of the one I just showed you of having all the little mock-ups in it, but it has a lot of good ideas in it, and it has shows you how to do a lot of different things. So I really like that book. Also, if you can find a book like this one or one of many others that are similar that shows you how to make pop-up greeting cards, you can get a lot of ideas out of the pop-up greeting card book.
Well, and one thing I noticed, at least the book that you were showing us, it's more of a scene or a background, and then you would have maybe you could have a puppet on a wire come across to tell the story. Is that
right? And I'm going to show
perfect?
you the puppets that I use in just a second here. But let me just show you these two books that I got at thrift shops. This one I got because it shows you a different way. I always use the book opening flat, the way I just showed you. But you can also create one that stands on end like this. And that can be pretty fun too. This was just a little kid's book that I found at a thrift shop that I thought was pretty cool. It also has little extra things in here, like stuff coming out of the drawers and stuff.
Hi, Monica, what is the name of that book? Can you show it to us?
It's called Maisie's Pop-Up Playhouse.
Awesome. I'm going to try to get that.
And then another one that I found at a thrift shop was this one, a Victorian dollhouse. This one, oh yeah, this is an open up flat one like this. And this is the front of the house. And then this is the back of the house. So it really is like a dollhouse.
And what is that one called?
This one is called A Victorian Dollhouse. And it's, where's the author? It's a Random House book. I do not, oh, created by Harry Safran. And then Maisie's Pop-Up Playhouse is by Lucy Cousins. Yeah, I didn't put either one of those. They were an afterthought to bring along, so I didn't put either one of them out of that on the, you know, on the.
Yeah. One more time, the name of the second one. I'm sorry. I'm just putting that as on chat.
It's called A Victorian Dollhouse.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And then now let me show you a few puppets. Now the first one, the Little Red Riding Hood book, uses little rod marionettes. And here's Little Red. So she can just walk around in that book. Actually, you know, recently we did a recording of Little Red for a library somewhere. If you think you'd like, I can send you that recording, and any of you can watch it if you want. So she just walks around.
If you can send that to me, Monica, then I can share it with everyone.
She just walks around on the pages of the book. One of the things that I love about this for staging is it's so easy to change scenes. And you can have such very, very different scenes that are a lot harder to do with other forms of puppetry. Here's Anton. He's the woodcutter with his hatchet. So that's the kind of puppet I use for this book. I'm back in the little bags here. But I also, in some of the shows, in the other two books that I put out just now, actually, they're all paper puppets. I use paper puppets in those. And I love paper puppets because if you like to draw, they're great fun to make because they're like making really cool paper dolls and then jointing them. This guy, I've always liked the kind of movements that this kind gets. They have the head and the torso are one piece. The arms and the legs are each two pieces. So they have a joint at the elbow and a joint at the knee with those little tiny paper fasteners that you can get it in scrap. You know, one of the boons lately has been the interest that people have in scrapbooking. You can get really cool papers and you can get all these little paper fasteners and stuff, and they make this so much easier and more fun. But what I like about this is that all you really have to do is wiggle the wire a tiny little bit and you get all of this movement. This is I just put 16 gauge florist wire into them to make them move. And what I do usually, in most cases, I make 2 layers and then I glue the wire in between the 2 layers. And a good way that I've discovered to glue those together is to use tacky glue and then iron them with a hot iron, because that really, really bonds the 2 pieces together. I don't know if you could separate them. These are just 2 layers of cardstock. There's a few more of those. Oh, there's a little devil that I like. Here's a devil. He's also 2 layers of, where's your other leg? Oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. And then I use some of that holographic paper on him to give him some color and some shine. In one scene of this, we've got Mr. Punch flying over from England, and the crocodile is following him in a hot air balloon. And then later on, we see the crocodile again. He lost his other rod. I'm gonna have to glue that back on again. And you can see that he has already swallowed Mr. Punch. So those are the kind of fun things that you can do with paper that are harder to do 3-dimensionally. I don't know, does that show? Yeah. Okay, there you go. One of the other things I like about paper is sometimes I throw in things like this too. When we started our puppet theater, the friend that I started it with, she and I had a bunch of little kids between the 2 of us. So we put them all in the shows, but then they started behaving like this, so we had to fire them. You know, so there's stuff like that you can do that's fun too. Here are some more paper puppets. Here's a dog from the last book I showed you, The Magical Winter's Night, the one that takes place in the woods. And he's the same thing. He's 2 layers of cardstock with a wire glued in between the 2 layers. And then the legs all are put together with those little paper fasteners. And they move really well, even though you're really not directing the movement. There's one scene in that little show where the little girl sees an owl, and she imagines that the owl is a witch. So you can do those kind of fun transformations. And actually, Michael and Valerie are the ones that, when they were in Iowa doing some shows when I was starting to work on this, and I remember I told them about it, and Michael said you should make some puppets where you can watch the transformation from one to the other. And I took him up on his challenge. So I have an owl that transforms into a witch, and I have a butterfly that transforms into a fairy. So those are fun things that you can do with paper that you really can't do, at least, I mean, you can make trick marionettes, obviously, but this is something fun that you can do with paper. I don't know, are there any other paper puppets here I should show you? Oh, there's a fish that transforms into a mermaid too. Yeah, that's, the rest of them are pretty straightforward.
And
Those are the
Olivia,
ones
I
that
think you had a
transform.
question. Did you get it answered?
I was curious
Yeah,
how you bind your book together.
Oh, okay, that's a good question. Yes, any real bookbinder would be horrified. I don't really bind it, it's a fake. I glue all the pages together. You can see the page, I glue all the pages together, and then I find an end paper that I like and glue it onto the cover, onto the inside of the cover and the inside of the first page. And then I just find some fabric I like and glue it around the pages themselves before I glue the cover on. So it's really a fake binding. It's not real book binding, but it works.
Thank you.
Yes, who else has questions?
I think we've been answering most of them as we go, but now sounds like a great opportunity to ask additional questions. Anyone else?
We have about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to stop and do a quick slide presentation of Nick Barone's work, and then we'll be going back to question and answer.
You want to
So-
do the slide presentation now, Cam, since we're at a sort of a stopping off point here?
Are we able to do that? Ray, can you come back in for a minute?
I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
Take questions for a moment. Hi, Lavera.
Hi.
Yeah. So come in. We're gonna.
So I'm going to ask my question.
Yeah, yes, please do.
Hi, Monica.
Hello.
From the last, I was at your last meeting. I don't know, a couple meetings ago. Anyway, so I'm working on this.
Okay, can you hold it? I'm gonna pin you so I can see that. Let's see. I gotta pin the speaker, right?
Try to keep it down.
No. Okay, say something so you're pinned. Right now I'm just seeing myself.
Okay. Here I am. Can you see me?
Oh, okay, cool. There you are. Hello, yes.
Hi. So what I've been working on, when I do the little extra stuff to be in front,
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out what's the best material to use for the tabs. Because you can see I tried to do a little tabby thing here.
Yeah, for the tabs, I just use the same poster board I used to make everything else. Can you show me that again? Can you speak again?
Yeah. This is the back,
Mhm.
but ideally it would just, when I push it down, when I push my page down, it'll just stick up. But
You don't have a tab to anything. I know what's wrong. You have a tab to the page instead of to something behind it.
Oh, so it should be tabbed to the actual
It can
scenery
either
in the
be
back.
tabbed to your mountain, or another choice would be to make like a little row of grasses or flowers or something that goes all the way across that the tree attaches to.
Oh, that's great.
But it has to it has to be attached to something that goes across the whole book. If it doesn't go across the middle, it won't stand up.
Okay, this was one I made. It's about city mouse and country mouse,
Cool.
and so I got my city, and I got my fancy city guy mouse for the city. So I'm just working on that country guy mouse and making all the little extra stuff for him.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm really impressed. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, your workshop was really great.
Oh, thank
Learn
you.
So Monica, if she made a
Thank
row
you,
of
guys.
grass, then she could attach a support to
Yeah,
that.
here, I'll show you. Let's get this out. I think there's a place in here. In this book, I think there's one.
Well, there you even had flowers or the grass there, and you're like there. You've got the grass and you've got the trees. Now they're
Here,
attached
yeah, I've
to
got
that.
trees on each side, but then I have grass that goes all the way across from one side to the other.
Okay.
So you need something like that to hold your tree up.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure. I'm just really excited that so many people are doing this. I still want to have a pop-up book festival. Or at least devote, we're going to be hosting, hopefully if the virus lets us, we're going to be hosting the Great Plains Regional Festival here again next September. And at least, if nothing else, I want to have part of that festival devoted to pop-up book shows.
All right, I'm just.
Anybody else? Or are we getting ready for the slideshow now?
I was just gonna check in with Cam and see if we're ready for the slides.
Okay. I have really fond memories of Nick too, because I was at Puppet Fest Midwest, not every summer, but most summers.
And Monica, I don't know if you see the chat. I know you're probably in the kind of Brady Bunch view,
Yeah.
but just some additional comments in here.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Cam, thumbs up. Are you ready?
Does anyone else have a question at the moment? Okay, we're gonna give this a shot.
I was just wondering what weight of wires used for those marionettes.
Oh, for the rod marionettes, I use construction flags. They're just the right weight wire. You know you know what I'm talking about, right?
No.
Oh, they're at the hardware store. You can get if you're walking through a construction site sometime, just look and see that those little wires that they have stuck into the ground with colored flags on them to show you to indicate where they're going to be building things. And sometimes they put them in to indicate where there's a gas line or something like that. Maybe you don't see that much of that stuff in the city, I guess. But they're wire flags. They're about this long, and they have a little, usually either orange or hot pink plastic flag on the end. But the wire, you can buy them in bundles of 50, and the wire is just the right weight for those, for the control, for the rods, for the little rod marionettes.
I'm sure that's something we would not have thought of.
Well, I live out here in the sticks. I probably see a lot more of that kind of stuff than you do.
All right, and Cam, I've shared with you a link to the slides that you've got. You're muted, by the way, so I can't hear you. Cam, you're muted right now, so we can't hear you. Camilla, you're muted still.
Okay, unmuted now. So I'm gonna press this link and.
But before you do that, go ahead and go into Zoom, and you can say share screen, so we could see whatever you've got, so you can see the link that I shared with you.
Share screen.
It's at the very bottom of Zoom, in the middle. It's a greenish button.
It's a share. Okay, let's see what we got.
And then click that one.
And click this.
And I will put this one. And you can use these.
Okay.
Oh, playing with.
Okay. So it looks like I'm going to manually go through this.
So I apologize. I'm not seeing what you're sharing yet. Were you able to click share screen at the bottom of Zoom and click on which window to share?
Share.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to Zoom.
Zoom is challenging for all of us. I'm in IT and I still have problems with it, so not a problem. Thank you very much for doing this.
We're trying.
Thanks, John. And then
share, cancel, share.
Just
Share?
hit share. Yeah.
Hit share. Oh.
Yeah. All right, there you go.
That's
Oh,
it. Perfect. Thank you. And now I'm seeing your desktop, and now I'm seeing the slides. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it looks like, no, don't go away. What do I
If
do
you would
next? What
like,
do I
you
do
can go
next?
to present up in the top corner, and then it'll just start and play like a natural slideshow. On the other corner, there's right next to share, there's present.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
We are on it.
Okay, no, don't go away. All right, so do I have to manually do this?
You should be able to hit your space bar, and that should start keying it. Or there's even a play there. There's a little arrow. Yep, there you go.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, so this is Nick Barone, who I met at Puppet Fest Midwest about 15 years ago. Turns out that you need to go to Missouri sometimes to meet your next door neighbors. Turns out that he and Rose lived right across the hill from us. Became very close friends with Nick and his wife. These are some of Nick's designs. So I'm just going to scroll through them. These are some of his drawings. This is turning some of his drawings into puppets. More of Nick's puppets. Okay, this is from Nick's memorial service. Unfortunately, sadly, tragically, Nick left us, I think in 2013. And we put together this amazing presentation of all of his work. The man did so much. Brilliant puppeteer, brilliant teacher. And he's the one who is funding this workshop. So I know that he would love that we are sharing this with you, that we're sharing his designs with you. And this is just a small part of an amazing body of work that he did in, I think that he probably was about 38 or 39 when he died. I'm not sure. I have to check on that. Okay, and that is the last slide. So this workshop is being presented to you. Everyone is being able to come without any kind of monetary input because we have gotten so much response and so much love for Nick from people in the guild and outside of the guild, and we really felt like he would want us to share this workshop with you. And so this one is totally on Nick. Amazing puppetry artist, amazing human being. And that was just a very short bit. We just wanted to show you a little bit of his body of work and what it is that he shares with us. So I will turn it back over to you all. And I would recommend that next time you have a piece of cheesecake, take a second to think about Nick, because that was his go-to dessert. And we would be sharing a piece of cheesecake with all of you, but you know, it's hard to do it through the internet. Have not figured that out yet. So I am going to turn it back over to the meeting. I still need you, darling. Okay, thank you so much. So back to Monica.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to see that.
She's got a minute.
Yeah, if anybody has any more questions, or if there's anything that I showed you earlier that you want to see more closely, because I kind of whipped through those books pretty quickly. If there's any construction technique you want to see a little more closely.
I need to learn more about this.
Oh, you are.
I'd like to see, you know, you made the owl there's something inside the hollow of a tree.
Oh, yes, the raccoon. Okay, let me find that when you access that book here. Ding. Camera down a little bit. Okay, here's the hollow tree. And the raccoon is just glued right into the hole there. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The raccoon. And the hollow tree, it's a cylinder. It of course has a crease on the front and back. You can't get a complete cylinder. But what you do is you fold two pieces and then you pull them out into a circle and glue them, oops, open up you. And glue them down in a circular shape. Is that visible?
Yeah.
Is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I did something like that one on my Anansi workshop for his campfire, and it worked so beautifully. Just little things like that are so easy to do once you've got the basic page.
And they just
and
add a little,
really effective.
it's nice. Many, many years back in the early, back around, no, I guess it was probably been 20 years ago now. Terry Jean and I were doing some shows in Germany, and we went to a puppet show in Berlin by Ulrich Treu, who's a wonderful puppeteer. And he and his partner were doing a Faust, and it was a paper theater show. It was before I had done any paper theater at all. And every one of those scenes had some little unexpected surprise in it. And that became our mantra. Every time we work on a new show, Terry Jean used to say, remember the Berlin boys, a surprise in every scene. And so now I'm the one that says that, remember the Berlin boys, even though you never saw them, but there's a surprise in every scene. And that's one thing I like about these pop-ups, is that you can put a little surprise into every scene.
There were a couple more questions on the chat. Oh, go ahead, John.
Thank you. During your puppet presentation with the pop-up book, what's your ideal setting? Do you like to be elevated a little bit or below, and what's the group size that you find is most effective?
Well, I've been surprised at how large the groups can be. I did this one summer. I toured this show in libraries in Oregon. I performed it at a regional festival up in Seattle, and then toured the libraries in Oregon. One of the places had 120 people, and nobody complained that they couldn't see, which really astounded me. I set it up so that this particular show, I carry in 2 suitcases, and then I kind of stack the suitcases on top of each other and set it up on the suitcases. So it ends up being about tabletop height. And that way you can either have the audience on the floor, if kids sitting on the floor, or you can have a raked seating. Like if you're in a theater, that works fine. They can see it from above. The thing that's hard is, just like any other show that's tabletop height, is you don't want to have rows of chairs, because anybody past the 3rd row isn't going to see anything but the back of the head of the person in front of them, But yeah, I've been surprised at how many people can see these.
I'm going to go back into some of the questions in here. Talib had a question. Is there a particular weight of cardstock you recommend?
Oh, I would only use, I don't use cardstock. I think I said that before, but maybe I wasn't clear enough. For these, I use mat board for the outside and railroad board, which is a fairly heavier duty poster board on the inside.
Right. And then the Nelsons had a couple items. Is there a project you're working on? And then do you have any thoughts on lighting for a show like this?
I just use lighting. I just light it with 2 150 watt baby Fresnels, one on each side, and that's plenty.
Great.
I still use Fresnels. I haven't gone over. We have so many lamps for the Fresnels. I'll probably be using the Fresnels for the rest of my life. And what was the other question?
Do you have a project you're working on?
Project. Well, actually, what we're doing right now, because it's the only thing that we can do live, is we're doing a drive-in puppet show, and it's big, not little. It's got to be big. It's big and high up, but we're having a ball with that. The thing that got me started, Nancy Smith got me started on the idea, because they were doing drive-in shows, and I thought, oh, that's something we could do. And then the idea for the story happened when I was listening to public radio one morning, as I do obsessively, and I heard a piece about an alligator that was in a deserted shopping mall in Myrtle Beach. And I thought, boy, that has puppet show written all over it. So my current puppet partner, Stephanie, and I started Googling all of the stories we could find about what animals were up to during lockdown. And we created a story around them. So we have 2 monkeys, a city monkey and a temple monkey. And we have the alligator, of course, with the shopping cart. And we have 2 penguins. The penguins are the protagonists. They're really the main characters. And then we also have a stampede of goats that comes through on a regular basis. And we start the show at sundown when it's still light enough. We do set up lights for it, but it's still light enough that people can see pretty well. And then the second half of the show is with shadow puppets. And that happens by the time we get to the shadow puppet scenes, it's just dark enough for the shadow puppets. So the starting time has changed, depending on when sunset is. That's when we try to start the show. We are going to be live streaming our last performance of it this season, probably our last performance, because in Iowa, nobody wants to book an outdoor show too much past mid-October. So we're going to be live streaming our last scheduled performance of it next Saturday evening at 6:30 our time, which is 4:30 your time. If anybody wants to get onto the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Facebook page, you can watch it there. We've got live music with it. We've got a musician that's playing guitar and keyboards, and it's a fun show.
Can you repeat the time again? Sorry.
6:30 our time, 4:30 your time.
And then
it's super silly, but we thought, you know, people need silly right now. They don't need any more serious.
What day?
Next Saturday.
How do we get to it again?
It's the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Facebook page. I'll probably put it on my personal Facebook page too, just so people can find it.
And this
maybe somebody could type it in.
This is being shared on our Facebook page, so perhaps right afterwards you could go to our Facebook page and just update the URL and the live stream that's being recorded. There were a couple other questions in here. I'll come back to Greg's, but first, you already answered the virtual puppet show, but because we were talking about the drive-in show, how big is the set for the drive-in show?
It's a sort of a semi-traditional hand puppet stage, and the playboard, the front playboard is about 6 feet. It's got two playboards. They're both about a little over. One's a little under and the other one's a little over 6 feet tall, and they're, I think, 7 feet wide. And then we have on one side, we also have a giant parade puppet of Mother Earth that sits there during the show, comes in and then sits there during the show. And on the other side, we have our musicians set up. So I guess it has a total width probably of about 15 or 20, 15 to 18 feet.
Great.
And, so far everybody said, and then the shadow screen is part of the hand puppet stage. It towers over sort of the back of the playboards. And so far everybody said, even people sitting pretty far back have been happy with how well they could see. We've been kind of limiting, we've been suggesting to people that hire us to do it that they limit it to about 20 cars. And then the way you park them is pivotal, of course. You've got to park the compacts in the front, and the vans in the back.
And then Greg also had a question. Greg, if you don't mind, you can unmute and maybe just re-ask your question. I think you could do it better justice than I could.
Yes, sorry. I was going to say the first time we saw the raccoon, I thought he had some animation. But it might have just been the motion of the folding. Were there any controls that you had to control the animation? And either way, do you have any character animation control methods you could briefly describe?
Well, the only things in the book that move are, there's a fox here, fox head, and a fox tail. And they just have a little, I just reach in and do that. I've got a glove on, but I just reach in through this open area in the back and do that. The paper puppets, let me see. I showed you how I do the twirly ones. Probably the one that I put the most effort into figuring out was the owl. So let's see if I can show you this. I think I better click on speaker view myself so I can see what I'm showing. Let's see. Wait. Oh well, I'll just hold it up to the camera. Can you see the owl now?
Yes.
The owl has two rods, they're construction flags, and then it has a couple of strings to the wings so it can flap its wings. And then I'll turn it around to the back and then I've got the, then I've got the witch. And then to go back in, it goes like that.
So she's like the mermaid and fish you showed us.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit more complicated than the mermaid and the fish, but it's basically the same idea. Yeah, I personally really, really like simplicity. I like things, I don't trust myself with too much technology. I like things that I can do with my 2 hands.
Amen.
So for the characters that you have within the pop-up book, it's mostly manually.
Yeah, they don't really. There's not really much animation. It's something you could do, though. I'd love to see what you did with it, and I could steal the idea. I always like to tell kids when I'm teaching workshops that the main reason I'm teaching it is that I'm planning on stealing their best ideas. And a lot of times it's true. You do get great ideas from kids because they don't feel limited by the possible.
Monica, one idea that you've talked about a couple of elements that you use in your shows, which are the puppets and the pop-up sets, but another really integral part of your shows is the presence of the puppeteer. And I wonder if you might say a little bit about how that all works together or your approach to that.
Well, I think the big thing is, you're right, I do a lot of shows where I'm a visible narrator character. That has always seemed to work okay for me. The main thing that's really important, I think, when you do that is that you understand where the focus goes at any particular time. And you make sure that when the puppet is in center stage that your total focus is on the puppet, because if you let that lapse, then the puppet goes dead. And I've come to the conclusion after watching a lot of other puppeteers, including you guys, by the way, Michael and Valerie, that a visible puppeteer does not distract from the show as long as the focus is there. People are more than willing to suspend their disbelief and to focus on the character if that's where your focus is.
There's a question from John Hay. How are you doing sound for your drive-in shows?
Oh, we're setting up our sound system so that if people that want to, some people bring lawn chairs and sit in front of their cars, but we're also using a transmitter that, thank you, Nancy Smith, for telling us what kind to get. And so we can also, they can also listen to it through their FM car radios.
That's pretty amazing.
It's
Would you be able to share that with us, maybe?
Pardon?
Would you be able to maybe share that with us over the next few days, and I could send that out in a link to people?
Yeah, I'll check and see what it was and send you. But I guess, you know, from what the other day, there were some other people that were interested in doing a drive-in show, and they asked Nancy and her crew and us to be at their Zoom meeting and talk about what we'd done. And Nancy's, Lisa Hasselbauer's husband, is a super techie. And he explained that basically all the that the transmitters you find online are basically all the same thing with different brand names. And they all, I think ours was somewhere, they all run between $100 and $200, I think, most of them. I can't remember exactly, but it was around that. But yeah, I'll look and see what we've got and send it to you.
Then Sharon had a couple questions. Are you doing this in costume? And I think you mentioned before you are doing some of these virtually, some of your presentations virtually.
You mean the drive-in show?
I think you had said that, well, so would this work for a virtual presentation was Sharon's actual question.
Would what work for a virtual?
Doing the book, doing your show.
Oh yeah, I mean, oh yeah, we have done some of those, you know, some libraries and stuff that wanted one this summer. Stephanie, my performing partner, just this summer finished making a really beautiful pop-up show about Kate Shelley, who was a teenage girl in Iowa who in the 1880s saved a freight train from plunging into the river, and she's been a state hero ever since. And we tried live streaming that in July, but the day was so hot that the cameras overheated, and it ended up being just sound. But we're going to be recording that next week because for the McNider Museum in Mason City. And when we do, if you guys want to see the recording, I'll pass it on to you.
We have 5 kids in 5 different locations that we need to put together for puppet shows for our 4-H presentations, and that's been our basic problem. particularly different backgrounds, meaning behind us backgrounds, not backgrounds meaning history. So trying to get them from place to place to place in a virtual show in 5 different locations is kind of difficult.
Yeah, that would be a challenge. So in other words, each one of them is performing a scene over Zoom from their location.
Exactly.
So they each have to have a, they could, you know, you could do that with pop-up pages if each one of them had a page.
Well, I loved your ideas about what would the animals be doing during the lockdown, and we could put animals in a different environment each time.
We taught a couple of Zoom workshops this summer, several parts, and you know, this was in my attempt to steal ideas from kids. That was when we were working on the script for this show, and we decided to use that as the subject for those workshops too. And we had the kids, they were shadow puppet workshops, and each kid picked a story that we found online about something else that, you know, there were zillions of them, zillions of things about animals. Wild boars stampeding the main streets of Barcelona, and, you know, temple monkeys and city monkeys getting into a brawl over a yogurt. And there were just a lot of things like that. And we had each of the kids pick one and build a scene around it and then perform it with shadow.
Where did they get their story ideas? Was this just from the news, or were there stories?
We spent the first workshop we spent working on story ideas. We presented, we you know, we found all the reports, and we started by telling them about all these different reports, and then each kid picked one of them to elaborate on and, you know, build a story around it using their own imaginations too. And we had some pretty interesting results. It was a lot of fun. And then the second meeting, you know, they made shadow puppets and little box shadow puppet screens.
Okay. I was thinking about it for the pop-up book type of a thing. Actually, you can have a page from each.
That would work really well. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that would work great. And you know, the thing I found about working with, I think it's hard. You could, depending on how much time you have, what would be ideal would be for all the kids to work on the same story, but for each kid to have a different scene to play out. That's what
I was thinking. Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Good idea, though.
Monica, if you were going to try to present a pop-up stage play for a drive-in COVID experience, would you use a screen and project it? How, would you be able to do that?
I don't think you could get big enough. But yes, if you had a screen behind you and you projected it onto the screen, that would work.
Okay.
But yeah, I would hesitate to make a pop-up book too much larger than the ones that I have, because I think they start getting pretty unstable when they're too big.
But projecting on a screen.
Yeah, one time I did. I've got a Snow Queen show that's also done with pop-up books and little rod marionettes, and I did that at the Detroit Institute of Art, and they projected it onto their screen behind. So yeah, there's no reason you can't do that.
Right. Great.
Hi, Monica. I have another question.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know if even if it would have to be on Zoom. I love I'm sorry, my son just got a thing that has an elevator, like a car. Yeah. Anyway, I'm interested in your festival of pop-up books, because that sounds really exciting, and I'm wondering, like, if it can't be in person. I mean, hopefully we would all be able to be in person by that time.
And it's true. It's something that could be done on Zoom. It could be done on Zoom. You're right.
Yeah, I'd love to see that or be part of that.
Okay. Okay. Send me an email and remind me, so I have your email address then too.
Okay. And I have time for maybe one more question, and then we need to wrap it up. Does anyone have a burning desire to ask a question before we close out?
Not a question. I just wanted to say thank you because that was amazing. I'm super excited right now thinking all these
Thank
ideas.
you so much. I'm really happy to hear that. And thank you so much for having me. This has been it's great to see all of you. It's, it'll be nice when we can see people in person again, but this is a whole lot better than nothing.
Well, thank you so much, Monica. This has been awesome. I've been lucky enough to take a few of these workshops from Monica's, and I'm the president of the San Francisco Guild. So if there's any questions that I can answer from my experience or I can pass on to Monica, I'll be glad to continue this conversation later. But we're going to have to wrap this up now. I believe we're going to be able to post a recording of this so that if you want to go back over and catch things that you missed before. I would like to thank you, Monica, so much. Thank Leah Armstrong and John Arnold for being tech support on this. And it's time to wrap it up.
And Cam, if you could share the chat with me, I wouldn't mind seeing the comments because I haven't had a chance to look at them in the questions.
Let me talk to John and find out how to do that.
Whether that's possible.
Let me see what I can do to copy it, but certainly the entire thing has been live streamed. Well, I missed the first few minutes in Facebook. It doesn't capture the chat in the Facebook, but I'll see what we can do to copy it. And thank you very much.
I just saved the chat. I can email that out if you need me to.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. It's monica@puppetspuppets.com.
And so any questions you have, email them to me and I will get them to Monica and we'll get back to you.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation.
And Sam, I still want to see your show, your Anansi show.
Yeah, I think that's one of the next things I'm going to work on is getting that online. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you for the next workshop, which I don't know which is going to be, but we'll get in touch with you. Thank you so much, Monica and everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.